Welcome to Flow with Arman Assadi. Greetings, greetings, greetings. It's been a hell of a year, right? I don't need to say that. In fact, it's probably annoying to even say so. I think it's pretty much the most common thing we've heard all year is a absolute shock and dismay at what the hell happened this year. And the purpose of this episode is to unpack that and to really go into a deeper analysis of what the hell happened, along with what the hell might happen next. And is there actually truly any silver lining here, any positive meaning that we can take away from this that isn't just some made up hogwash meant to make myself or you feel better? So let's dive in. And a reminder, if you're watching, to make sure to subscribe on YouTube or on Instagram, follow me. And if you're listening, subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And show notes for this episode will be at armanassadi.com, along with every other episode. So let's dive in. What the hell happened? I'm going to quickly set the stage and then go into really what happened. First of all, a few beliefs, a few personal beliefs of mine. I believe that what has happened and unfolded so far in 2020 for the entire world was, in a sense, an inevitable and necessary moment for our evolution. When most people say things like that, it's very easy to sneer at and go, you are just sort of doing a form of bypassing around what is really happening here in order to find that silver lining. But I really do believe wholeheartedly, and I can explain why, that this is an inevitable and necessary moment for our evolution. To keep it simple, the pandemic itself, let's just start there. That was inevitable. This is something that scientists have known is a more likely scenario than any other form of apocalyptic thing that we often worry about. So the preparation that should have really taken place for this at a global level just hadn't. And we were going to see a virus take over our planet at one moment or another. The great news is that as deadly as this virus is, it could have been a lot worse. Could have been much more worse. I also believe that from a political landscape, what we've seen, this clash between these authoritarian and libertarian values, was also inevitable. And we're actually only at the beginning of that. And it's a bit of good news, bad news on that front, which I'll unpack more. But really, I think what's happening is that we're resetting ourselves before we relaunch exponentially fast into a future that is dominated by technology, and technology being a second skin, something that we have birthed that is a part of ourselves, that literally came from our minds and our fingertips. I don't think of technology as a separate entity at all. And I go very in depth on this in my episode with Kevin Kelly. So if you're interested in technology, God, science, you must listen to that episode with Kevin Kelly. But the point is, this is a reset. That's very clear. Everyone and everything took a step inward and backward and reevaluated their lives and the systems that we live in. And what that reset allows us to do is to look at truth in a more honest way and to realign and reposition ourselves before a lot of this exponential growth happens. And if you can just imagine an exponential curve, you have to understand that when we look at a singularity type event, which requires that sort of what is a part of that singularity event is an exponential shift and change, warp speed of time, of evolution. But you don't realize you're in it when you're in it, because you're somewhere along that axis that is going exponentially fast, and it's unclear where you're at. So most of the time it's very unclear until you get to the point where that axis starts to really curve up. and things start to move really fast. And I think that if you're alive today, this is the craziest time ever to be alive. The things that we are going to see and have already seen that have happened right before our eyes are absolutely mind-boggling. We just don't realize they're happening because they're happening so fast. We might start to get to a point where they're happening before our eyes and it is like a what the fuck, how is this happening moment because it's going to start moving so fast. If we are not aligned properly as a species, we're fucked. We'll kill each other, we'll kill ourselves, we'll go crazy, and we'll see a lot of war. What we have to do is align ourselves consciously, spiritually, even cognitively, even with the right set of values about what we are building. I posted something the other day on Instagram. It was just a photo of Dubai in 1990 versus 2020, or I think it was 1980 versus 2010, a 30-year span. You just see nothing but desert and dirt and nothingness. And then the next photo is like the city of the future. And I've only been to Dubai once. I only spent like a day there. I need to go back and really explore. But it's an unbelievable place. The amount of money that has been invested, architecture, and what is possible. It's insane to see what human beings, sapiens, have done when we apply ourselves and our minds and our labor to something. And it shouldn't be taken for granted. Again, the point is these shifts are happening very fast. The world is changing. We have to ask ourselves what it all means. Okay, so that's kind of the landscape. But let's really start with like, well, what happened here? There's a thought and a notion that I often think about. It's that the reason this has been so jarring for so many of us, for all of us, for every single person, and this applies to not just people my age, but to the older generation. Nobody's seen anything like this. The world has not seen anything like this since World War II. I think that's fair to say. And with World War II, there were places that were, somewhat isolated from, this entire experience. Whereas this is an invisible virus, right? And so what we really had happen is our collective narrative, air quotes, if you will, has been shattered. What does that mean, our collective narrative? Our collective narrative is all the things that we take and took for granted about what life means and what we are here to do. The reason that there was a collective, meaning a group narrative, was that there was agreement on what we are here to do and what life entails. Get a job, find a girlfriend or boyfriend, maybe marry that person, have some kids, go to school, take out a student loan debt, go to the doctor, get an annual physical, take care of your body, eat decent, good food. All that kind of stuff is just a collective narrative of how life should be. And it insulates you and keeps you safe from the predators that might exist outside of that narrative. I think my friend Jason Silva often references this quote. I believe the quote is, I don't remember who the quote is by actually, but it might have been Terence McKenna, but it's something around the lines of like the schizophrenics of the world are actually living in reality. Reality is pure fucking chaos. To actually take it all in and be aware of the magnitude of what reality is and the number of people, things, places, variables, and possibilities can be very much like a schizophrenic state. The human being that is not labeled schizophrenic has bought into and one thing I didn't mention is the fact that you are like a god in the sense that you have so much power and free will to direct your life, and you have agency and sentience of your life itself. But one day you will die. And that is something that I think deeply affects people until they deal with it. And I don't think it ever goes away completely. That is the spiritual journey, very much so, in and of itself, is that acceptance of mortality and that this journey will one day end. And when you allow it to take over, you can become schizophrenic, for example. To safeguard yourself and prevent yourself from the chaos of life, you buy into these collective narratives and they protect you. What has happened as a result of the pandemic, as a result of the battle politically, especially in America, which is now happening across the world, and the conversation around racism, is that the collective narrative has been shattered. The virus itself now brings that thing that I think fundamentally gives people anxiety and depression and fear to the surface, and that is death. Nobody is protected from this thing, especially when it first happened. I remember when it first happened and nobody knew what was going on, right? And I remember going into all like close to panic, but measured. At least my response. It was like, gotta move fast, gotta get the things that I need for myself and my family and my friends and my loved ones. Equipment, supplies, fucking masks. I mean, everything. Thermometers, hand sanitizer, a gun. I mean, whatever I could get my hands on. And that was a survival reaction that was necessary because nobody knew what we were really dealing with. I mean, the level of what this virus was. And that virus automatically brought a tremendous amount of death awareness and anxiety to every single person's life. I mean, children, from kids to the elderly, nobody really knew. Now, there were some scientists early on that said, there was different perspectives on this. Like, hey, don't worry. Like, if you're young and you're healthy, like, live your life. Let's not close the economy. Do your thing. Build herd immunity. That's the approach. But the other side also makes just as compelling of an argument and says, wear the mask, stay home. Here's why. Every time you go out, you're hurting somebody who, you're giving it to somebody who might die. And you might also get really sick. Maybe you have an underlying condition that you're not even aware of. So everyone's just like, fuck, I don't want to get COVID. The vid. As Kevin Hart says, I don't want to get the vid. So nobody wants the vid. And our anxiety and our safety is like sky high. Now, eventually, I think that dipped down. Oh, but guess what? As soon as that might be getting a little bit better, obviously, the stock market and the economy. Oh my God. What the hell is going on? 2008 all over again. Now, I was too young in 2008 that time. Hadn't accumulated, I hadn't gone fully into my wealth accumulation phase. I wasn't deeply invested in multiple industries. And now this time it's like, holy shit, what's going to happen? And we have something, and I hate this word because it's been said a million times this year. We have something, we need a list of words that we're going to ban, by the way. Ooh, that would be really good for some cancel culture talk. How many words this year got banned, by the way? There's so many things happening. How many people got canceled? How many people said the wrong thing? Okay, I'm getting off track. But the word is unprecedented. We had this unprecedented event take place and nobody knew, nobody still knows what the fuck to do about their money. Because if they knew, they'd become a billionaire. They'd place the bet, they'd go all in, and they'd win. The question became, do I move to cash? But cash looks like trash and it's losing value every single day. I'm worried about insane amounts of inflation. Well, shit, where do I go? The stock market is crumbling, but equities and stocks seem like the only thing that are maintaining any form of value. Do I go to bonds? No, bonds are absolute garbage. All of my bond portfolio just went down to the trash. Oh, do I go to crypto? I don't know. What the hell is crypto? And all this stuff happening at once was extremely alarming, and that uncertainty has continued. And while the stock market has rebounded. A lot of people talk about, typically something like this looks like a W, and we're going to see another crash, and we're going to pay the price for all the capital that we're infusing and the money that we're printing out into the world and out into the country, I should say. Again, a lot of what I'm saying is coming from the perspective of America. And it's chaos. And so another factor that brought an insane amount of pressure and anxiety for people, maybe even for the first time ever in their lives, around their livelihood. I have to say, especially as a man, I brought this up last night with my friend Nick. We talked about money and investing for an hour and a half straight. We always do. And it's fun. And I get up to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, dude, before I go to the bathroom, like, something to think about. Why is it that we're so fascinated by investing and money and financial, like, freedom? And he was like, dude, that's easy. Survival. It's just survival as a man. Men in our society, the way it is today, the way we're built, and I think we also have a natural disposition for that sense of personally surviving and helping those around us survive and protecting those people. Providing security is an innate thing that I think every man carries on their shoulders. So what does that mean? It means that men, oftentimes, we have an insane amount of responsibility on our shoulders that we either choose to carry or we avoid. You can see it very clearly when you look at a man. Are they a boy or are they a fucking man? And if they're behaving like a boy, it's because they're playing video games. I'm not saying everyone that plays video games is bad. I've played video games before. I'm saying, like, the extreme example. They're wasting away their life. They're not really working. They're not really applying themselves. They're going down a rabbit hole of porn and video games and stupid stuff for hours a day to avoid the sense of responsibility that is a huge burden to carry, understandably. And so the other side of it is you carry the burden and it's extremely heavy. Now, that doesn't mean that women don't also carry this burden, especially in 2020, going into 2021. The shift you've seen between genders, between, what do we consider gender roles to be, that discussion is also happening. And it's like there is a huge movement of feminism and independence across all women. Not every woman is behaving that way and thinking that way and has that philosophy, but you see it a lot. And so now women are also carrying that burden of responsibility, financial security. And unfortunately, if you were to just simply measure and look at all of this, I am positive, I don't know the exact number, but you see way more men probably investing and becoming entrepreneurs, or had become, that were entrepreneurs. And we have these very positive, awesome movements to help women become financial experts, build more and more financial literacy, and enter the tech sector as well. Like, one of my friends runs a group, Women in Tech, or helping women learn to code or become entrepreneurs. But naturally, as far as dispositions go, you don't see people go that direction. You see a disparity, you see a difference in trade that they naturally want to go toward. Women often go into the medical fields and things like that, and men are often heavier in the STEM fields and things like that. Now, I'm getting on a tangent. The point of all this is it's an insane level of weight and responsibility. You add that to everything. God, that was a hell of a tangent. You add that to everything, and it gets really heavy. Furthermore, you have a huge battle. I think it's akin to a level of, like, war happening between ideologies. And these ideologies, I don't want to oversimplify, but for the sake of getting it across, we have something happening that is akin to, we have a conversation and a battle and a war happening around what is truth, really. On one side, we have the fundamentalists, like truth has a fundamental aspect to it. And on the other side, we have the relativists, where, and let me explain this. When you are a fundamentalist, if you believe that there is a fundamental truth, it's kind of like having the 10 Commandments. It's kind of like saying, I know what the absolute truth is. This truth is absolute. It applies to everyone, and it comes from me, or it comes from God, or it comes from this place, and I'm absolutely sure it's true, and it applies to everybody. On the other side, you have the relativists, and the relativists say there is no absolute truth. Truth is subjective, not objective. It's subjective, and every single man and woman in the world has their own truth, and they're right. And that's pure chaos. And this is too much order and fundamentalism. So you have chaos versus fundamentalism. You also, from a political perspective, have this battle happening where it's like authoritarianism versus libertarian values. On the one hand, you have, we will create a strong sense of order to protect you in exchange for your personal freedom and security. And on the other side, you have, don't you dare take my personal freedom away. I will never give up any freedom in exchange for security. I'll take care of myself. Thank you very much. It's this individualistic libertarian value versus this authoritarian one. Whew. Wow, right? I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. And fortunately and unfortunately, this one I don't think is going anywhere anytime soon. I think we peeled back the veil and we are exposing a layer of an ideological battle that's been happening for a long time, and we've brought it to the surface, and now it's on the surface and it's exposed, and technology and social media are bringing it to the surface more than ever before. It's heightened, and then we're in this echo chamber of our news feed on Instagram and Facebook, particularly, that is feeding us more and more and more of my fundamental truth or my relativistic truth. So think about that. You see the battle and you see the disparity, and that's what's happening. But people are getting fed more and more of that same truth on social media. So it's like if you were already kind of leaning fundamentalist, you're just going to get more and more and more of that. Or if you were leaning slightly authoritarian in your values and in your political compass, you're going to get more and more and more of that. The crazy part, though, is I think we all know that, but the craziest part is that you don't believe that there's a reality outside of that exists. You think you're getting a broad brush of everything that's happening, but you're not. And documentaries like Social Dilemma, which I highly recommend every single one of you to watch. It's one of the most terrifying movies I've ever seen. It's not an actual scary movie. It's just terrifying in the sense of the truth that it exposes. It's insane. And that's exactly what's happening. Now, another thing I want to mention about the fundamental truth or the relativistic truth is like, with the fundamental truth, everyone believes they have the truth. Like each person, I hold the 10 commandments of truth. And on the other side, what unfortunately happens is that when a person believes that truth is subjective, there is no such thing as truth, what you have is a lot of nihilism. And in essence, what I mean is that there's a lack of meaning in the world and for your own life even. And so it becomes very difficult to take on anything in life, any form of responsibility whatsoever, because it's like, well, fuck it. What's the point? There's no meaning to all this. It's pure random chaos. Okay. So to close that, there is something that we need to all understand and be aware of, and that is this concept of the narrow path. The narrow path that exists in between fundamentalism and relativism. There is a space where you hold the two opposites. And both things can be true, sometimes simultaneously, sometimes interchangeably. But there is a space that you and I can learn to think critically and operate in that allows for both of those pieces, both of those truths to be true. Question. And in all fairness, I've already partly answered this question, but there's plenty more to go through. And if you're watching, you know that I'm wearing a completely different outfit. I got my beard trimmed, and it's a whole different day. And it just so happened that I was jumping into a meeting, had to stop recording. But I think it was meant to be, because this is such a huge question of what is the 2021 game plan and beyond. that I really needed to marinate on this for a little while because I can't just give some bullshit answer. So let's quickly unpack that. The first thing I'll say is that I know what we don't want. What we don't want is a Hunger Games, like the movie type scenario, where you see this authoritarian power rise and people have absolutely no freedom left. And if you've seen the movie, you've seen the movie. It's like every dystopian movie you've ever seen about the government being tyrannical and taking over. We don't want that. And let me clarify one thing. When I say that there is this battle, this war of ideologies happening between authoritarianism and libertarianism, I want to be clear that it doesn't look like authoritarian type behavior. It looks like social justice. It's disguised. And one of the unfortunate and tragic things about social justice and anything in that direction whatsoever are that they sound so good. These ideas, these theories about creating utopian or protopian, even progressive worldview type level of harmony don't actually end up working in execution, and they fail historically, and they lead to greater and greater division and bloodshed, even as we've seen in the past. And so I know what we don't want. And I think that socially, politically, and economically, we clearly want change. And so it's just so easy to say, I want change, I want change, I want change. But the people that generally want change are the ones that they themselves will not change. And when they want change, they just want to break everything and destroy everything around them. And we can't do that because that is essentially anarchy. And we don't need to break everything, but we do need a new system. Yes, of course we do. We need a new system because in order to evolve as a species and because everything that I've talked about is happening, especially the technological exponential growth of technology as a whole, we have to be prepared to make good decisions. And so the best, as far as I can tell, capitalism, while it has its flaws, is a system that is working in many regards, in many ways, but it has its shortcomings and it leads to its own form of challenges that hurt the individuals where the corporations and the rich often are the winners. That's definitely become a narrative against capitalism that, capitalism is the enemy. It is a system in which the rich become richer, the poor become poorer. But this isn't true. And we don't need to break everything. And we could look at that. I mean, I could do 2 hours on that. But the point is that I think what we need to be thinking about is merging capitalism with a true compassion and true empathy that's built on the level of the individual and not to be confused with this social media virtue signaling bullshit that we see. I'm talking about something completely different when I say compassion. I'm talking about compassion at the root fundamental level of what it means to be human, acknowledging and understanding that there are different viewpoints in the world, that you could be any one of these people, that your life and who you are was a roll of the dice. The zip code you were born in, the parents that you have, and everything about you was a roll of the dice. And so true compassion is the understanding intellectually and emotionally that you are me and I am you, and there is an interconnectedness of all of life beyond just the human level even. That takes the individual, you and I, spending a lot of time actually learning about that and sitting in that as a truth. As we begin to do that, we will make better and better decisions. So ultimately, what I think I'm seeing is that we need to promote individualism and we need to stop outsourcing our power. I heard Russell Brand say this, and I thought it was beautiful. We're just giving up our power to the powers and hoping that they will make good decisions for us. But as we have seen for many, many years, that isn't necessarily working. And so the power of individualism, your mind, your thoughts, your ideas, that's the most important thing. So don't outsource your power or your knowledge or where you get your information. We can't be lazy. We have to spend the time learning and thinking and processing and then sharing our ideas. And as technology continues to rise, as I said, we need to make excellent moral decisions. We will be faced with some huge decisions in our lifetime, and especially over the next few years. But we need compassion. We need to understand that some people need security, some people need freedom, some people need religion, some people need money. There is a hierarchy of needs here that goes both this way, up and down, vertically, and horizontally as well. The vertical axis is that we're all at different parts of the hierarchy of needs. You know, maybe I've evolved to the point where I'm sitting here thinking about self-actualization and philosophy, but some people are just trying to put a roof over their heads. And then horizontally, we have to understand that the needs are different. My version of life and what I want it to be is quite different from everyone else's, and that's where compassion comes in. And I think the most fundamental thing that we truly need to shift is in this day and age where we constantly keep talking about how much further we've grown apart and how wide the aisle has become and the duality of the ideas that we see and the echo chambers that have been created, we have to realize that that problem that we all have with debate and disagreeing with one another is the problem. True democracy and progress is founded on debate, us being okay not agreeing. And I know that's such a simple concept, but really what I am saying is stand up for your ideas, your true ideas, share them, don't be silent, and be willing to debate them and create examples of what healthy debate looks like. And discourse, fight and share and discourse around these ideas, and understand that democracy is not the majority of the people agreeing on the right way forward. Democracy is the most number of people sharing their ideas and feeling represented by their ideas, and then voting in accordance with their individual wants, needs, and desires. That's the point. You're voting for what's best for you, and you're saying and sharing what's best for you. And based on that, we come up with a plan that is best for the best number of people. That's it. But we're stuck saying, why don't you agree with my viewpoint, and which side should I jump on that has the most power or that feels like it identifies me the most through my church or through my peer group or through my race or through some bullshit identifier that we've created, and that is not going to get us anywhere. Debate, discourse, and having a voice is critical. And I think that the most important thing that a person can do in their lifetime, one of the most important things that a person can do, is sharing their ideas. Share your ideas. You have no idea how much it impacts other people. It could impact your neighbor, your children, your future children, your social media followers, your friends, your parents. Maybe they're not listening. Maybe they act like they're not listening. Maybe they don't get it today. But the effect that that could have on a decision that they make in the future is the definition of progress and evolution. What I am essentially saying is that if you did not share your idea, you could not inception that person with a different way of thinking. And inception meaning in the best way possible. Like, you're not trying to move somebody into a form of thinking that is wrong or flawed. You're simply doing the best you can with the ideas that you have. And if they're positive and they're for the greater good, somebody might latch onto those and finally think differently for the first time. And that's all it takes, is one spark for somebody to think differently, and that could change and shape democracy, or the lack of democracy, and moving people into democracy. It could change policy, and it could change everything. It could change a future, like imagine a future decision where we're going to have to decide around the morality of life extension. Or what if there are like immortal beings one day? What if we merge with AI and we have to make a choice to upload our consciousness into the cloud or not? What if we have to make a choice where we see that we've merged with AI, and then AI is killing off all these non-superhumans maybe not directly, but indirectly, and they're not evolving, they're not keeping up, and we have to make some critical decisions about how much of our biology we maintain and how much of our technology we maintain, and really big, crazy questions. And it is this sharing of ideas and becoming open to discourse and disagreeing that can get us there, because we have some very big decisions to make in the future. And so, in essence, in 2021 and beyond, we all have a role to play. I think what we have found is that we can no longer sit on the sidelines. I'll correct that. I think that if a person wants to be in their bliss bubble, or another way to put it would just be to say that they don't care and they don't identify with this stuff, and they don't think they just don't feel that calling to really spend time in this stuff, that is totally understandable, actually. But for those of you that know you have some work to do and some things to share, it's time, and the work has just begun, in my opinion, as far as I can tell. So that's my 2020 review. That's where I think we're headed, or at least where I hope we're headed. And for now, what I would like to see. And I think this is really the beginning of this dialogue. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're make sure you're subscribed to the show on Apple Podcasts. I got YouTube now. And make sure you give me a follow on Instagram at Arman Assadi. All right. Take care of yourself. Peace.